Hello, I'm Stephanie Wheeler. I am putting this video together for some basic review for some ASL features. This may be new information, this may be refresher information for some of you. The reason that we're putting this video together is just sometimes when we get bogged down in some of the feedback and going through our videos, sometimes it's nice to just get a little bit reminder of some of what our ASL goals are and what our target language is. So that's kind of where this is coming from. Please keep in mind that I am not a certified ASL instructor. This information is coming from a variety of sources, including ASL professors, ASL resources, texts, some experiential learning, that sort of thing, workshops, and what have you. So anyway, here we go. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so before we can get into ASL, we have to look a little bit at the English. So we should be familiar with what our English grammar looks like, right? So if you look at the screen here, we're pretty comfortable with our English sentence structure. So if we keep in mind that a lot of times our English starts with our subject over here, we've got our cat, verb, so we've got subject, verb, and then object being the mat over here. So that's pretty typical of our English grammatical structure. So that's something that we have to have a good foundation in before we can move into what we're looking at for our ASL. So feature one that I want to talk about real quick is we look at feature one of ASL being time, topic, actor, action, modal. That's a lot of words just basically saying ASL is very typical of topic comment type structure. Just a quick note here, modal being some of that, again, like it says here, the attitude of the speaker signer or things that are needing to happen. So examples, some of these contingencies, possibilities, probabilities of things happening. So some of our modals that we're discussing are could, may, might, must, shall, will, need. So for example, if you're looking at an ASL sentence, topic, comment, and then with that modal on the end, you could say something along the lines of, so money is the topic, and then I need that, right? Okay, so just one really brief, short example. So, okay, so keep that in mind as feature one. Feature two being that ASL also moves from big to small. So in ASL, how this works, just as a reminder, if you're talking about in English, we could have like that first example sentence, the cat sat on the mat. In ASL, you can't start with the cat, you have to start with the mat. So big to small. So what's happening and then getting down to those details. So for ASL, in that regard, it would be, okay, which also fits with our time, topic, the action modal sequence that we had just looked through a minute ago as well. So if you look at this picture that we have on the screen, if you were going to describe this in ASL, how would you do that? You wouldn't be able to start with you can't start with describing the framed picture or mirror on the wall and then going to the table and chairs. You'd have to start with the whole room. And then you can go from working out to back in, right? Explaining where the bed is sitting, where the table is sitting, where the chairs are sitting. So you go from big to small. Another example of this would be if you're describing or if somebody's speaking of directions or I walked into my office today and found out that my desk was a mess. You can't start with, you'd have to go backwards and start with the office and talk about what you saw once you walked into the office, okay? All right, so just an option to practice with something like this, describing this picture, or listening to conversations and working from bigger to smaller. Again, thinking back to feature 1, time, topic, comment. So again, when we're this concept of the time, topic, actor, action, modal, when I refer to time, we are talking about tenses. So current tense, future tense, past tense. We're not speaking of specific time on a clock, like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. When we're speaking of time in this feature of ASL, we're specifically referring to, is it happening now? Will it happen in the future? Has it already happened? Okay, so an example, let me make myself a little bigger here. Oh, my camera went away. There we go. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to say that I have a doctor's appointment today at 1 o'clock, in English, that's how I would say it. I have a doctor's appointment today at 1 o'clock. If you're doing that in ASL, looking at the features we just talked about, it would look like, okay, so again, time, topic, actor, all of that. So time being today, right? Topic being my doctor's appointment, me being the actor, action being I have to go, and then the modal at the end again, I have to go, or I need to go, or have to go. Okay, so sorry, back to where we were. Okay, so then feature 2 being big to small, and then feature 3 being rhetorical questions. So we know from ASL that some of our non-manual markers are facial grammar. For yes, no questions, our eyebrows are up. For WH questions, so what, when, who, where, why, those things, our eyebrows are furrowed. Rhetorical questions are their own animal. So again, just a refresher. So for a yes, no question, get myself full screen again. Okay, so for a yes, no question, it would be, again, also thinking back to feature 1, keeping that in mind. Okay, so coffee being our topic, the comment afterwards asking if you like it, and being a yes, no question. Okay, do you like coffee? Okay, so if we were to do a WH question, it could be something like, okay, so which one would you like, coffee or tea? Which one do you prefer? Eyebrows are going to be down because you have to answer that with more than a yes or no. Okay, but then when we've got a rhetorical question, that's when it kind of changes that a little bit because it's not a yes or no, and it's not a WH. A rhetorical question is going to use typically a WH type sign, what, where, who, why, but our eyebrows are going to be up. So just to, again, make things confusing. So for a rhetorical, it would be something like, okay, so my favorite drink is tea. Okay, so we've got the rhetorical, and again, just a quick note, when our target language is English, when you're watching somebody and they are signing a rhetorical, that does not get voiced into English because that is not native to English. And so it's going to sound strange on the listener end. Okay, so going back to this, our rhetorical questions, so that's where it gets a little bit different, is it's going to be one of our WH signs, so a who, what, where, when, why, those types of things, but your eyebrows are going to go up, there's a little bit of a lean forward, and then the person, the signer, myself, or the deaf person who you're voicing for is going to answer their own question, hence the rhetorical part of it. And then commonly these are used for emphasis as well as topic changes or transition between ideas. Okay, so that is kind of all of that in a nutshell. So here's some examples. So feature A, the first feature of the time, topic, actor, action, modal. Here we go. We have, again, these are capitalized because that's the glossing of the ASL to represent the ASL sign. So we've got time, topic, actor, action, modal, right? So we've got, again, tomorrow our our tense. So in English, that would be, Paul can play baseball tomorrow. And then so if you wanted to practice with this, you can look at a simple sentence like in English, I want to watch TV on Friday. But then in ASL, we'd have to rearrange that. And so, okay, just a couple of options there. And so I would encourage you to take a minute, maybe pause the video, practice with some of these simple sentences and figure out how would you use that feature one, our topic, the topic, time topic, actor action modal, how would you rearrange these into ASL sentences? And then also thinking bigger to smaller, for example, like with the I ate lunch in the cafeteria, where would you start with that one? So on the honor system here, I would encourage you to take a minute, pause it, look it over, see what you can do with it, play with that for a minute. Okay, and then again, more practice for the big to small feature, ASL, feature 2 in ASL. So putting a book on a shelf, I put the book on the shelf. You don't start with the book, you would start with the shelf, and just a couple of options to play with that. Again, the idea of you have to start with the bigger object going to the smaller one. So I would encourage you to practice with those for a few minutes or similar types of concepts. Okay, and then rhetoricals. These are English sentences. How would you work a rhetorical into this? So, for example, due to bad weather, I arrived late to work. Okay, so just things you can play with to practice getting some of those rhetoricals in there as well. Okay, so one second. This was done for an in-person lecture. That's why we've got some of this stuff happening here, but let me get myself out of the way here and practice working in 1, 2, all 3 of those ASL features. Again, our time, topic, actor, action, modal, our big to small, as well as our rhetoricals, just a couple of statements here to try to practice with those. Okay. So hopefully this has been somewhat helpful. If you guys have questions, feel free to reach out. Again, I know that this might have been a pretty basic review for some people, but something to always keep in the back of our minds when we're working on all of these other things and we're trying to put the pieces together. Sometimes it's nice to just kind of do a quick refresher on what it is we're aiming for. So anyway, I hope this has helped, and I will see you guys out there in cyberspace. We'll talk to you soon.